Welcome into another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021, and I'm your host, George Kerth, here with the one and only Cody Roadcap. Cody, how are you on this fine Tuesday?
I'm doing pretty good. We had a Couch GM sweep this weekend, which if you don't know what that is, that Tyler, George, myself are all fans of the Packers, Titans, and Eagles. Well, we're not all fans of all three teams, but those are the three home teams here. They all got a victory this past weekend. I got $10 from QB1 in Green Bay via Bitcoin and the Cash App, so feeling great about that. Had a lot better weekend than to any fantasy owner out there that started Kyler Murray, Derrick Henry, James Robinson, Justin Jefferson, Mike Williams, Kyle Pitts, and you flexed Emmanuel Sanders. And if you play with kickers, if you had Austin Seibert and the Bucs defense, how many fantasy points do you think that stacked fantasy lineups got this past week?
Well, I'm trying to think. My girlfriend actually had a couple of those pieces, and she had 63.5 PPR. I'm going to go with 54. Random number,
Nope.
54.
In a half-point PPR,
Ooh.
that what we thought would be a good fantasy lineup had 25.26 points.
You say
25.
25?
Kyler Murray, Derrick Henry, James Robinson, Justin Jefferson, Mike Williams, Kyle Pitts, Emmanuel Sanders, Austin Seibert, and the Bucs defense. 25.
So we found the all-bust team of the week. 25 points.
Yeah,
Wow.
For anyone out there, I apologize. That is tough. I know there was a lot of guys that had below averages. There was a lot of running backs, wide receivers that were under 10. It was a rough week for fantasy out there. So hopefully you had a better week. And if you're not, maybe George and I can help you a little bit this week.
That's right, because we're going to talk about the waiver wire and find some guys that can help you fill some spots for week 9. And we're going to start it off with some NFL news and notes. And everybody, we're going to start NFL news the way we always seem to start NFL news on a Tuesday, and that is with our injury roundup. And there was a big one this week, one that we didn't see coming. The King, Derrick Henry, has gone down with a foot injury. He doesn't seem to ever really miss games, and now he is likely out for the regular season. This is uncharted territory. We don't really know how to react, but the first thing that's worth noting is the Titans signed veteran running back Adrian Peterson. Cody, any advice to give anybody when it comes to this? This is so out of the blue, and he played the entire game yesterday. Didn't see anything coming until this morning, or Monday morning, I should say.
Yeah, the news was very interesting on how it unfolded. He had the last rush attempt before they kicked the game-winning field goal in overtime. No one mentioned it on Twitter or after the game that he was banged up, and then out of nowhere, having an MRI to see if he'll be out for the season. Unfortunately, it seems like he has a fracture in his foot that will require surgery. The current timeline is 6 to 10 weeks. I do know on NFL Live on Monday, Dan Orlovsky, he did say he had suffered this injury, and you're on crutches for 6 weeks, so he doesn't understand how he'll be back. So 8 weeks is probably
Because he's Derrick Henry.
Well, 8 weeks is probably still the bare minimum of what it would be. 10 weeks would be on the bright side. Luckily, the Tennessee Titans have a pretty easy schedule. I mean, they get to play the Jags again. They get to play the Houston Texans twice. They got some of their bigger games away. They still have some tough matchups, but they have a 3-game lead on the Colts, so there is still a chance that they can pull through and make the playoffs, and then Derrick Henry can come back. I know there's a lot of optimism, but I do know there is some people around the league that are like, they can say 8 to 10 weeks, but unless they make a deep playoff run, there's no way he's coming back, because one thing I did hear them say was because of where it is on the foot, there's not as much blood flow. It takes longer to heal, and then you need a ramp up period to get it back to 100%. So not a great sign. Tough for fantasy. It was something I was concerned about going into this year. If you were listening back at the beginning, we were doing our running back way too early running back rankings. I was like, he gets so many attempts. Like, we saw this with Christian McCaffrey. He had 2 years where he dominated rushing attempts, passing attempts. He was getting so much volume. We saw this with Derrick Henry. Now, the dude broke his foot at some point in the game and still had 28 carries last. So who knows? Like, the dude's a monster. But at some point, like, no matter how good you get that much work, like, injuries unfortunately catch up. Hopefully, this is just a
Mhm.
bump in the road in Derrick Henry's career. He can either come back next season or late in the playoff season to give the Titans a playoff push. But you hate to see it for a guy that was dominating the rushing stats, was going to make it very hard for anyone to a quarterback to win the MVP because he looked like he was the front runner. And it'll be interesting, if he can come back in 2 weeks, like can he still compete for the rushing title? He almost has 1,000 yards. Like it'll be interesting how that goes. And again, it's tough luck for anybody that drafted a running back in like the top 4 picks. None of them have really lived up to their expectations.
Nope. I mean, it seems like pretty much every first round running back has missed some sort of time so far, whether it be more or less significant. Um, we can talk more about replacements for Derrick Henry and move down into the waiver wire because it's obviously where you're going to be fishing this week. And we can move on to another injury. Jameis Winston had a very awkward tackle in the Saints game this weekend, and is now they now know that he tore his ACL and MCL. He is out for the season. This probably changes the landscape of the Saints offense quite a lot. And we don't even know if Taysom Hill's going to be the guy quite yet because he's still dealing with some concussion symptoms. But you would think when he is back from his concussion, he is the guy, and that is a big change for what the Saints were going for with Jameis Winston.
Yeah, it was a brutal injury. It was a clear reason of why the horse collar tackle got expanded to the nameplate. He got pulled down right from there. His knee got trapped underneath him and twisted, and it didn't look good from the very beginning. He has quickly become a player that everybody loves in New Orleans. Like you could see even the guys from Tampa Bay when he was still there, they were all coming over. Like you can tell how important he was as a locker room guy. If you didn't check it out, they were celebrating after their big win on against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And in the back of the locker room, there was Jameis on one leg, throwing his crutches up in the air, partying with his teammates. Like Jameis is a locker room guy. He's still going to be there with the team recovering. It's a big question mark for his future going forward. I believe he was brought back on another 1 year deal. Fantasy wise, I mean, we didn't love Jameis Winston, but I can't think you like Trevor Simeon that much. Taysom
Mm-mm.
Hill's interesting because of his rushing ability, but like you mentioned, he'll be he's still banged up. We're not sure when he'll be back. So, not great for the fantasy or quarterbacks. And then, Michael Thomas is coming back soon. But, like,
We
where
hope.
does that put him now? Like, everyone's been holding on that he comes back, but now if they go back to Taysom Hill, like, are you now regretting that you've held him this long? Like, it's gonna be a tough thing to play out there
Now,
in New Orleans.
yeah, it definitely brings more of a question mark, and I think you love Michael Thomas more with Jameis Winston, but I almost see him as one of the safer wide receivers in the league because he thrives off of contested short catches and running those little slant routes, being that safe, easy completion for a first down for the quarterback. And he did well with Taysom Hill last year when Taysom Hill was starting when Drew Brees went down. So I'm not super worried about Michael Thomas as long as he comes back 100% from his injury, but it is a little bit of a hit because I think the bigger play ability goes away when you have Jameis Winston come off the field and bring on more of a gadget player like Taysom Hill or the downgrade that is Trevor Simeon even.
Yeah, that's for sure, and, I know Drew Brees has said at the beginning of the season he's not coming out of retirement. I'd be interested to see if they could swing him. The Saints are in need of a quarterback. They're now sitting atop the NFC South. I'm just kidding. I don't actually think that's coming. Another not injury related, but another big name that is taking a step away from football. That is Calvin Ridley. He's been out the last couple of weeks with a personal matter. He came back and tried to play. He wasn't a big name there, but it came out this past week, last minute. He needed to take some time away to take care of his mental health. Um, and I know for fantasy owners, it feels like it's a big blow, but as fans of the football, are fans of football, not the football, fans of Calvin Ridley, um, 100% support his decision. You got to take care of your mental state. Uh, and more props to him. We're seeing this more and more of, big time athletes needing to step away. Like the pressure, uh, you know, being in the spotlight is consuming. You have a lot to work with. We saw Simone Biles need to step away during the Olympics. Lane Johnson from the Eagles just had to step away. Like it is impressive, and it's more encouraging to see more of these big names guys take a step away, realize that they need help for their mental health. And so we wish nothing but the best for Calvin Ridley, whether he comes back this season or next season. Um, as long as he comes back in a better headspace and on his own time, that's what we're rooting for.
Definitely. If anybody out there needs help, please go find help. It's your mental health is as important as your physical health. And I am very encouraged by how everybody is taking a step forward in this space. Like just being an Eagles fan, you talked about Lane Johnson stepped away this year. And when we found out it was for a mental health situation, it was amazing how positive the reaction was. But I even think back to, I believe it was 2 seasons ago, Brandon Brooks, another Eagles offensive lineman, stepped back because he had issues with anxiety, another mental health problem, and it was met with a little bit more resistance. I'm not saying that there was a negative feedback from it, but people were a lot more skeptical or like, is this really matter? Does this really help? I like how everybody is taking a step forward with this and realizing how mental health is important. So, yes, really, Calvin Ridley, I hope you come back. I mean, obviously, I hope you come back soon, but I hope you come back, feeling better in a better headspace, like Cody said. And everybody needs to take this seriously.
100%. Like George mentioned, don't be afraid to reach out if something's not right. Look, everyone has their own demons that they fight with every day. It doesn't matter if you're a guy just listening to this podcast, a guy that wants to start a podcast on the NFL stage. Everybody is going through something, and there's no shame in asking for help. We got one more little bit of news, though. This came right around the Derrick Henry trade. It was like news palooza Monday morning. But Von Miller was traded to the Rams for 2 draft picks, leaving the Rams with only 4 draft picks left in the 2022 draft. They are clearly going all in on this season. What are
On
your
top of
thoughts?
that, if you didn't see on Twitter, they actually posted a GIF of them pushing all their chips in and saying we're all in. So on top of that, they're going right with you.
Yes, but so if that gif where he goes all in, the guy
Yeah,
loses the hand.
maybe Rams social media should have thought about that a little bit more then.
Because that's what Packers Twitter, they would then replayed the whole clip, and they're like, "But this hand doesn't end well for." So, a little fun on Twitter, out us Couch GMs, that's where we, get most of our news. That's where we spend our time trying to think what we would do for our own teams. But Von Miller traded to the Rams. You have to think this bolsters their defense that hasn't been as good, as it was last year. They're like I said, they're making the push to go all in for this season. What were your first thoughts when the Rams made this move?
I think the Rams are really trying to build the best front seven in the NFL right now. And they think that they realize that they're in a unique situation now that they got Matt Stafford for how they did. They don't have a lot of draft picks, so their window is going to be tight and they're taking advantage of it. And I appreciate it. I mean, the Rams might end up being a disaster in 3 years. You really don't know if their talent starts to trickle down, they don't have the draft picks to replenish. But they're going all in for now. And I think this is even a better thing. I mean, while it doesn't have much of a fantasy impact, the Rams defense could end up performing even better. You don't really know, but the Rams in general are all in. Your Rams assets are going for it. And I love the move. I think it doesn't make sense for Denver, if anything, because I also heard another caveat how Denver is still paying like 9 million of the $9.7 million that Von Miller's owed this year. It's like the Rams fleeced them. I don't understand. But Von Miller was a locker room leader. He was a face of a franchise. Got traded for 2 draft picks, and they're paying his salary. I don't even understand how this happened. But the Rams, props to them for making this move.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the whole salary thing is still a mystery to me. I do understand it a little bit from the Broncos standpoint. Von Miller missed this past week with an injury. They had some other pass rushers step up. Von Miller's in the last year of his contract. They got a second and a third round pick, where if they would have let him walk in free agency, the most they would have gotten was a third round comp pick. So they did improve their value.
Okay.
It is weird that they're still willing to pay so much. It's like pay $9 million to Von Miller to not be on your team. That sounds crazy. But it's almost like the Rams are going all in, and the Broncos are starting to realize that it's going to be tough for them in the AFC. Now they did just come off a win against the Washington football team, but they have to deal with the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Raiders, and the rest of the AFC in their own division. It seems like they realize that they're not quite there. They want to get some of their younger guys more involved and maybe, load up to go all in next year. That could be an approach they're
Mhm.
taking. Like you said, not a lot of news to come out of it for fantasy, but from an actual football side, which we talk about because Couch GMs, we like to think we own the teams. Uh, they're it looks good for them and the Rams. I guess it sucks for me though because as fans, it's like, how does that? It doesn't when you talk about the salary cap being a myth, which it's not a myth in a sense. Like you can always find a way to make it work, but then when you can get a team to pay $9 million to not, it's like then what's the point of the salary? Like those are the questions. Like the salary cap's supposed to
Yeah.
balance it out for teams, but then you can get another team to pay so much of their salary and keep playing. It's not like they cut them and then they still owed
Mhm.
them that. So that's too much math for my brain.
That's why we are not cap experts. We are general managers. I think they're actually separate positions in the front office for the most part. But anyway, I think it's time to move off of news and move into my favorite segment, quotes of the week. And I'm going to start off quotes of the week with one of the Eagles' hated rivals, Dallas Cowboys. Starting quarterback for this week, Cooper Rush. On winning his first game in a Cowboys uniform, he said, "Yeah, you definitely dream about them, and it's just as good as the dream. It's pretty awesome to be able to show everyone and to be able to win like that. You always want to win like that." And it was nice that he had not only had his moment, but he had it in dramatic fashion on Sunday night. As much as I do not like the Cowboys, I like seeing stories like this. Cooper Rush was like I think a bona fide backup quarterback 2 years ago. He was off a roster last year. He worked his way back. Dak had an issue. He was the guy to step in, and he performed.
Yeah, it wasn't the prettiest game, but when it came down to it, he got it done with a pretty nice uh, fade route to Amari Cooper to seal the game-winning touchdown. So props to Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys. That game was tough for me as a Packers fan. It's like you don't want the Vikings to win because they're in division. You don't want the Cowboys to win because they're the same record or the same record essentially because they've already had their bye week. So it was a tough from a rooting standpoint, but it was like you said, those stories are always great to hear from. And we got another one in our next quotes of the week. Mike White. I don't know why I want to call him Right, but Mike White shocked the world. I don't know what it is about the Jets. They can beat the Bengals and they can beat the Titans, but they can't beat anybody else. They can only beat the teams that are sitting at the top of the AFC when they play them. That's that's their whole mo. But after Mike White went out and beat the Bengals, Jets head coach Robert Saleh was asked about him being the starter, and we'll take it day to day, but anything is possible, which had everybody going crazy. Like, wait a second, are they really going to bench second overall pick Zach Wilson for Mike White? Like, what's going on here? What are your thoughts? Is there a real possibility that Mike White plays over Zach Wilson?
Now, like I can't see them benching Zach Wilson this soon because of all the draft capital they put into him. But if you're looking at it from a football standpoint, if the team's responding to Mike White, if Mike White actually is playing like a competent starting quarterback, you kind of can't bench him either. I'm going to lean to the fact that no, they will not actually bench Zach Wilson because it doesn't make any sense for how they invested in him. But Mike White may deserve a shot. It's also worth noting he threw 2 interceptions, so it wasn't like he played a perfect game on Sunday, but the team responded to him, and it's almost nice seeing a team that is struggling, even though yeah, they did already beat the Titans, go up against another AFC powerhouse with some adversity and respond. Like those are normally signs that you see a team's going to come out of a rebuild soon. They don't have the talent to win consistently, but they have a head coach that's responding. They have the talent to step up to the occasion, at least on occasion. It was a good sign. And I don't know if Mike White's really their answer. I think Zach Wilson has a much better chance. I don't see them replacing Zach Wilson because of the draft capital.
I agree with that. I think Zach Wilson will be back once he's healthy, but the Mike White story will continue until then.
And they traded
George,
for Joe Flacco for pretty much nothing now, it seems like.
it they just wanted that veteran. Maybe he's not even at the team. Maybe he's doing the McCown role, and he's just chilling in his hometown and just doing the meetings virtual. And then if there's like a huge COVID outbreak, he'll come in. We'll have to wait and see what they do with Flacco. But George, I'll give you the last quote. Uh, since it's your boy Carson Wentz.
My boy Carson Wentz, he says. Well, Carson Wentz started off the game against the Titans this Sunday fantastic. They went up to a 14-0 lead, and then down the stretch, Carson Wentz looked like bad Carson Wentz. And he had thrown a horrible interception with his left hand on a toss, and they asked him about it in his post-game press conference. He said they had it covered up pretty good, obviously. Terrible play, terrible play. One-on-one, trying to find a way just to get rid of the ball, and the next thing you know, I'm about to go down. So yeah, one I definitely want back. That hurts a little bit. I think the biggest thing is we talked about that was what, week 2 or 3 after he had his double ankle injury, and he looked like he just panicked when anyone was near him. I saw a little bit of a sign of that when he got under pressure near the end of that game. I don't know. I don't want to say Carson Wentz isn't clutch because he's had plenty of clutch drives in his career, but he shows signs of pressure at times. And that was one of them where he made a boneheaded mistake because it was a key part of the game and he was under pressure about to get sacked.
Yeah, it's a tough one to evaluate. Don't get me wrong. I am not going to defend Carson Wentz for the boneheaded move, but it was what I said, boneheaded. Now, he was getting rushed and he was in the end zone. He should have definitely thrown the ball away. Like, he should have just thrown it at his
Mhm.
feet before he had to switch it to his left hand. He should have done it earlier. He shouldn't have tried
Yeah.
to make nothing happen, like live to play another down. But looking back at it, isn't I granted you don't want to pick six at all. You don't want to give that up. But wouldn't have
Yeah.
taking a safety there and giving the ball back to the Titans with only just over 2 minutes or right under 2 minutes been worse than giving up a pick six and then having to go to then he sent them down and got them to overtime. So I'm not, again, terrible decision. Never should have made it. Should have got rid of the ball quicker. But in some weird way, I think like if it was a pick six or a safety, I think the pick six might have been the better outcome.
These are the times where I kind of wish we had an analytics guy because I kind of want to see like that. Now that you mentioned that, it does make sense. I want to see what the win percentages would have been with safety plus giving the Titans the ball as opposed to pick six getting the ball back. That's a great point. It doesn't help the fact that it was the ugliest looking play I've seen in 2 weeks of
Oh,
Carson Wentz, but that's a
no,
good
for sure.
point there, actually.
No, and again, I am not saying, well, he did it on purpose. So because
No.
again, if he would have thrown it away, like they could have went and won the game, he wouldn't have had to go tie the
Mhm.
game. But that was something
Yeah.
that crossed my mind. Like if he would have taken that sack and it would have been a safety, and now they're punting the ball back, they would probably have to do an onside safety punt, and it would have been just a whole fiasco. And
Yeah.
and he threw another interception in overtime. So the guy, he went from looking good and then threw two interceptions at the end of the game. So it was not a great day
Mhm.
for Carson Wentz as all. And on, like I said, it gets a lot more interesting now that Derrick Henry's out. But that puts the Colts 3 games and 2 losses behind. Well, 3 total games, and they've lost twice to the Titans. They're in a rough
Yeah.
spot, and they still have the Patriots to play. They still have the Ravens to play. They still have the Buccaneers to play, and they still have the Bills to play. So they have a gauntlet of a schedule coming up to try to get back into this playoff position, which has to make Titans fans feel a little bit better that they can, if they can just get through this regular season and clinch the AFC South with 2 wins over the Colts. I mean, they have to feel pretty good, even despite the news today.
Definitely. And you're mentioning Derrick Henry, so I think it's a good time for us to move into our week 9 waivers to talk about how we can replace someone like Derrick Henry.
Yeah, well, first off, there is no replacing Derrick Henry. I was talking to my dad before
There's
George.
air quotes replacing Derrick Henry.
Yes, I was talking to my dad. This would be like the Bears losing Walter Payton, or like how the Bills, or the not the Bills, the Lions have yet to find a running back to replace Barry Sanders because there's no replacing a guy. Like that's the level of talent we're talking about. Derrick Henry, at least this season. If you don't want to say he's up there all time, but this season he was straight out dominant, and they replaced him with another straight out dominant running back about 7 or 8 years ago, Adrian Peterson. He was signed to the practice squad Monday afternoon with full expectations of him being added to the roster. With that said, Adrian Peterson is the guy I'm targeting out of this backfield. I know Jeremy McNichols is there. He will probably be more of the pass catching role. It'll probably be more of a running back by committee. But if I need a guy this week, I would have to go with McNichols because Adrian Peterson hasn't played in 8 weeks. Like, he hasn't played since last year. He's going to need some time to get caught up on the system. He's going to need time to get his body in shape. We saw what happened with Richard Sherman when he was signed off the street and played the next week. He instantly pulled his hamstring because it takes time for your body to get up to NFL speed. So Adrian Peterson, although I think he's a top waiver ad just because there's not that many great waiver options out there, if you're in desperate need of a running back, it's not buy apocalypse, but we're back to 4 buys this week, go with Jeremy McNichols. But in a long-term play, I think Adrian Peterson is the guy that could at least help balance the load. He has a similar running style and help keep teams balanced. But realistically, like, this is all on Ryan Tannehill to get them to the finish line.
Definitely. I mean, I was going to mention McNichols if you didn't, but I think you covered pretty much everything that I wanted to. Also, you can go over to the couchgms.com and check out our fantasy waiver wire column for a couple of bonus players. I put McNichols on that. I also wrote it before the Adrian Peterson news, but McNichols is still going to be valuable at least for a week, or at least until Adrian Peterson gets up to speed. Still not a bad ad. I'm going to move on to staying at the running back position, but move on to the Philadelphia Eagles. And we gave you a little bit of a warning last week. It didn't shake out how we thought, but Gainwell, we did not expect to get all those first team touches because we heard a lot about Jordan Howard running with the first team. He got elevated off the practice squad, and he did have a great game, scored 2 touchdowns. But the man who got the most work was actually Boston Scott. So Boston Scott scored 2 touchdowns as well. He was the one that started. So you can always say, like, oh, the Eagles got up so much. Maybe they just played him because he's the backup running back. Gainwell didn't get work until the fourth quarter, if like at least not significant work until the fourth quarter. So if anyone benefited from them going up and playing the backups, it was actually Kenny Gainwell. I don't know if that was a game plan thing because it was, the scheme of the Lions might have worked towards Boston Scott. We might end up start seeing a little bit of Sirianni tricks coming from that backfield until Miles Sanders comes back, but Boston Scott right now has to be the guy to own. And if you're desperate for a running back, he has pass catching ability as well. So in a PPR, even if he doesn't get as many touches as he did this week, he could be valuable at least for a few week stretch.
Yeah, I like the Boston Scott ad. It's crazy to me that the Eagles put up, what was it, 48 points, and that was Jalen Hurts' worst game fantasy wise. He had
He
what,
threw
less than
12
12?
passes. He threw 12 passes.
Yeah, I think he had less than 12 points on the day.
Yep,
It's
he
crazy
did.
to me. Devontae Smith had 2 points. Like, besides Boston Scott, there was really no fantasy
Boston
production.
Scott and Jordan Howard both got 2 touchdowns. That was basically all of it.
Yeah, so crazy. Hopefully I mean, it worked for them. Maybe they'll continue it. I know Sirianni was hyped. He was like jumping up and down off the locker room like it just takes one route to get everybody excited, and his team around him did not look excited. I don't know what that's about, but that video was funny, and my eyes probably not in Georgia's. But I'll pivot to my next fantasy waiver edition, and I'm going to tell you to add another guy to the tight end dartboard. Currently sitting, we are recording this before the Monday night game kicks off, so Travis Kelce, Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph, any of them could overtake him, but currently sitting as tight end number 1 on the week is Pat Firemouth. Now, you might say, is it great to be tight end
PR.
number 1? Yes, it is. He had 10.4 points. I believe that's standard scoring. Um, so 10.4 points. If I told you the next 3 guys, you'd probably be like, who are they? Brevin Jordan's number 2, and Jesse James is number 3, and Geoff Swain was number 5. So great week for tight ends. This is why tight ends are about as useful as you can find in fantasy. But Pat
This
Freiermuth
is why
has
they saved it all for National Tight End Day and they used it all up. There was nothing left this week.
that is a very good point. Now, if you switch over to half point PPR, TJ Hawkinson was the number 1 tight end, but that's because he had 10 receptions. So shout out to TJ Hawkinson for coming through where he haven't been for the last few weeks. But yeah, back to Pat Freiermuth. He is building a connection with Ben Roethlisberger. The fans love him. The teams love him. They're comparing him to Heath Miller, which was always a solid option there in Pittsburgh. And Eric Ebron is dealing with an injury. He might be back this week. He might not be. But as Freiermuth's season continues to grow, he's just another name you can put out on the dartboard. The only thing you do have to worry about with the Steelers is their offense doesn't look like an offense that's going to be putting up a ton of points. Like, they're probably going to cap out between 20 and 27 points a week if they can even get that high. So his scoring potential isn't the highest in terms of touchdowns, but he is a guy that they look for in the red zone. So it's a balancing act, but we're talking tight end. They're all dart throws.
And I mean, they lost Juju, so targets had to go somewhere. We knew it was probably going to be a boost for Claypool, it was going to be a boost for Deontay Johnson, but the tight ends might be getting more work, and Fryermuth seems to be the guy who's going to benefit from that. Speaking of getting more work, I have a headache, and Brandon Ayuk is the cause of my headache because I finally jump off the bandwagon, and San Francisco decides to give him the most snaps for any wide receiver this week. He has not a breakout game, but he had his best game of the season. He didn't even put up 10 half PPR fantasy points, but knowing his talent and knowing what he did down the stretch last year, he was dropped in probably 60% of leagues. I think he's owned somewhere in the 40% now. You almost have to add him just because of what he can do. And I hate it. I wish it was either off or on because I'm tired of playing the yo-yo game with Brandon Ayuk. But with not that many good wide receivers on the wire, if you're desperate for a wide receiver, you have to add him just because of the speculation of he's finally getting back on the field. He got a couple of targets this week, and he has the ability to be a number one wide receiver if they allow it.
Yeah, Brandon Ayuk, he is such an interesting case. He looks so good, then he hasn't looked so bad. It didn't make quotes of the week, but I know Kyle Shanahan said I don't know if he said he played or he worked his butt off this week. So like he's starting to get decent comments from Kyle Shanahan. So that could be worth something. Have you held on to him?
It's much
Props to
improvement
you.
over earlier in the season.
Yeah, he's getting there. They're on another team though with Jimmy Garoppolo there. Their point, and they're always gonna be run first. His point output isn't gonna be the best. They still have Debo Samuel, and they still love getting Debo Samuel involved. But again, just like last year, he could, if he starts to turn it on now, he could end up being a league winner, like he was for a lot of people last year. But I'll hit my last fantasy waiver, and I'm going to talk about a guy that I'm not even 100% sure you have to go out and grab on your waiver wire. Maybe the trade deadline. We're recording this on a Monday night for a Tuesday airing. The trade deadline is at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. So maybe you want to stay out of waivers, or maybe you'll know somebody that's on the move. Maybe Marlon Mack will get traded to the Ravens. I know that's one George is looking for. Maybe Ronald Jones will be on the move. And if any of those guys happen, like we'll keep you updated on the Twitter. They're gonna jump ahead of some of these guys for sure. If a third string running back goes to a place where he might be a number one option, you that is talented, you might want to pick up them. But a guy that you might even want to sit out on waivers and see who gets cut, or maybe you're desperate, maybe you're in a two quarterback league, and that's Taysom Hill. Now we talked about he's still dealing with concussion uh, issues. He's been out 3 weeks. That's a pretty long time for a concussion, but hopefully he will be back soon. But if you look back to last year when he started those 4 games for Drew Brees, his lowest fantasy total was 17 and a half points. And 2 of those weeks, he was over 20. So not like the high end fantasy quarterback options, but they're decent numbers. And he has running ability. He is essentially similar to Jalen Hurts. Like it might not look pretty most of the game, but when you check your fantasy lineup, he's going to have points because he's going to run the ball. He's going to be active. And well, it's kind of a wait and see. Again, you might not pick him up on waivers. You might wait until the later in the week to see if he clears concussion protocol because you might not be able to waste the roster spot. But just Taysom Hill is a name to keep your eye on because I imagine if he is back healthy, he instantly jumps Trevor Simeon and he's back in the starting lineup. And rushing quarterbacks are a cheat code in fantasy football.
That they are. But I have a question then. If rushing quarterbacks are cheat code in fantasy football, are cornerbacks turned wide receiver cheat codes in fantasy football?
I think, if you're turned from something like Cordero Patterson running wide receiver to running back, and now he's having like a breakout season. So maybe cornerbacks turned wide receivers, punt returners turned focal points. Hey, big
Yeah.
options there.
Well, the man I'm talking about is Jamal Agnew. So he's still getting acclimated in the Jaguars offense and playing offense in general, it seems like, but The injury to DJ Chark, now we thought was going to boost Laviska Shenault. It moved him to the outside in that offense, and the new slot receiver seems to be Jamal Agnew, who is getting a lot of targets. Now, he's not really turning a lot of it into catches yet. He had 12 targets this week, 6 catches. Not a great production there. Did score a touchdown to salvage a fantasy week, but anyone that's going to get 12 targets, and it seems like his targets are going up every week right now, is worth adding. So definitely worth a speculative ad. And I also want to throw in also on the Jaguars. We didn't talk about it, but James Robinson did leave a game with the injury as well. And they don't have a great matchup this week, but a man to watch is Carlos Hyde. He's already been an established NFL starting running back. He could put up a good week if he has the opportunity. I don't know if I love it if he only plays his one game as a starter against the Bills. We have to kind of see how we shake out in our rankings later in this week. We'll talk about that then. But somebody to watch out for if you're running back desperate this week is Carlos Hyde. Because if James Robinson doesn't play, can potentially be a plug and play in your lineup.
100%. And just so you know, Jamal Agnew had 3 times the targets and caught 3 times the passes and had 3 times more the yardage than Laviska Shenault this past weekend. Who knows what Urban Meyer is doing down there? Uh, Again, you're not going to feel great about starting Jamal Agnew, but if you're in a half point or full point PPR and you're desperate for a flex option, they're going to have to put up points to keep up with the Bills. So it might not be the worst option out there. And again, I gave at the top of the show, I gave you a whole list of guys that have been averaging, 14 plus points a game at wide receiver, a whole fantasy lineup that you would feel solid about. They all done it. So sometimes you got to take a big risk. But that's a great one to wrap it up on. And we talked a little bit about it when I was going, trades are most likely going to happen. Some years the trade deadline is super quiet. Sometimes it's super active. There's a lot of names swirling out there. So again, pay attention. We'll be updating you on Twitter of any moves that might be fantasy relevant. But George, before we get out of here, is there any trades fantasy wise, NFL wise, that you're just hoping to see come to fruition?
Well, you already mentioned it, and I think we've already talked about it, so I won't touch on it too long. But Marlon Mack to the Ravens would give us immediately another great fantasy running back. We've talked about how the Ravens running backs aren't really valuable anymore, but I think part of it is it's a bunch of veterans who just aren't performing up to par. And we've seen Marlon Mack look effective in the work that he's gotten. I think if he gets more work in a Raven system that does well with running backs, it'd be fantastic. So I really hope that happens. I would even take Ronald Jones and Baltimore at this point, but I just don't see Ronald Jones being moved. The other thing that I want, and it's a little bit more broad, Allen Robinson to a good quarterback. I don't care where it is. I just want Allen Robinson to a good quarterback.
Well, just for fun, pick your favorite spot. Since we're
Pick my
talking,
favorite spot.
if you want to think about it,
Um,
I can talk a little bit.
yeah, go ahead, come back.
All right, we'll wait to hear from George on some of his favorite spots for Allen Robinson. I will update you guys. We've been talking about the last couple of weeks. It does not sound like Deshaun Watson will be moved. It seemed like both the Dolphins and the Cardinals kind of put those not the Cardinals, the Panthers, excuse me, Carolina Cardinals sound the same. Panthers, Dolphins seem to say we're going to wait till the offseason. That doesn't look like it. Brandon Cooks was another big name. He doesn't appear to be on the trade block, so he'll keep being the only guy in Houston. But there is some names, they're not fancy names. But I was thinking like a guy like Dearness Johnson. He might have some trade value. Now he's obviously not going to go to Baltimore because he's in the same division. He might not even get to go to a team like Tennessee, which I think would be a great fit for him. But they know Tennessee is like a team that's competing. They might not want to help them get better. Maybe they want to flip him for a decent pick. But Dearness Johnson, he had a big name. Evan Ingram. We'll see if he gets moved. Hopefully, he doesn't get traded midway through the game because I need Evan Ingram, which you guys will already know if this happened. Evan Ingram and Tyreek Hill to score 7 more points than Darrell Williams this week. So if Evan Ingram gets traded halfway through the game and they pull him and I lose, I'll be a little heartbroken. But I would like to see Evan Ingram get a fresh start. I think, he has one of the all-time best rookie seasons as the tight end and just hasn't been able to flourish. A team like Green Bay, he just lost Robert Tunyon. There's other teams out there, the Chargers, Jared Cook hasn't been what they were expecting. I like that option. The Titans, maybe they want to go all pass heavy. They haven't really had a tight end since John Smith left. Maybe even, so there's some other teams out there. The Carolina Panthers, Tommy Tremble hasn't stepped up. I know they traded Dan Arnold. There's just a lot of tight end, options out there. I'd love to see Evan Ingram get moved into the, potential tight end dartboards. But George, do you have any updates on where you would like to see Allen Robinson the most?
I'm actually going to give you two. So the first one, um, as much as I would actually probably like to see OBJ move too, I would like to see him get replaced with Allen Robinson. I feel like Allen Robinson has to play better with Baker Mayfield than OBJ has. And I don't know what it is, but it seems like we've talked about it. Those two just have not been good together. So I would like to see that as a good shot. My other one would probably be the Saints, because the Saints, the one position they really seem to be lacking in, I know they're probably going to be getting Michael Thomas back, but is wide receiver. So if you could pair Michael Thomas and Allen Robinson, it would help fix a quarterback problem without Jameis Winston. They're probably going all in because they have so much cap trouble. If they're going to go 5-2, what does it hurt for them to push the chips in even more, try to win this championship before their team really starts to decimate because of all their cap problems and aging and everything else?
Oh, that would be interesting. Getting Allen Robinson and uh, Michael Thomas on the same field. Now, granted, you said you want to see him go to a good quarterback situation, but that would fit right in with where the quarterbacks he's played with in the past. There's one other name,
It would. So my quarterback situation that's better would have to be the Browns. You're right.
the Browns may. Maybe they'll do OBJ for Odell Beckham straight up, and then they'll
Yeah.
go from there. Um,
Yeah, maybe.
Another guy, I'm talking another running back that, probably won't get traded, but he might because I didn't expect the Broncos to trade Von Miller. But Melvin Gordon, he's looked average, but they're also doing a true 50-50 split for Javonte Williams. Maybe they're ready to turn the keys over to Javonte Williams. Again, we know the running back needy teams. The Titans now without
Mhm.
Derrick Henry. The Ravens. Now, again, will the Broncos trade in conference to, they might want to look to the NFC. Well, you could have them trading a guy to, I am now blanking on all the NFC teams that I was going to mention, but maybe Seattle gets in on Melvin Gordon. Alex Collins has looked
That's a
okay,
good
but
idea.
they still don't know about Chris Carson. So Melvin Gordon is a name that I think would be interesting, and that would actually help for fantasy wise. Two guys, depending where he goes, because if he moves on, Javonte Williams becomes a clear number one running back, and then Melvin Gordon probably starts wherever he ends up. So I do like those. And of course, there's a bunch of other names that I'm, just out there. Uh, Andy Isabella, a rookie from the Cardinals, just seems to get lost in that situation. That's like a low risk, high reward type guy. Um, Jamison Crowder, even with Mike
Mhm.
White, he put up some decent numbers. Does he get moved for a team? There's a lot of like fringe guys that I don't think are going to be like blockbuster moves. Even Cordarrelle Patterson, like he's 30 years old, balling out. Like the Falcons are done. Like why not trade him? Like you'll never get a better
As
value.
much as I hope they don't, because I feel like this is the only team that's actually used him to his potential.
Oh, for sure. Like if he gets traded, he's going to go to like the Packers or the Chiefs, where he'll be
Mhm.
like the fun option. He won't be like the guy. Like it'll plummet his value for fantasy wise.
Yeah.
But for a team building wise, if we're going back to NFL and how you run your team, this might be the best time and the most value you could get out of a guy like Cordarrelle Patterson.
Another guy I want to watch. It doesn't sound like he's going to get moved. Would be Brandon Cooks. And him and Deshaun Jackson, even Andy Isabella, some of those fast wide receivers. I think some team like the Chargers might be looking out for a wide receiver 3 with some speed. So that's something I would watch out for as well with those three names. Watch out for a team like the Chargers.
100. That's a great um addition to add to that list. You never know. And Deshaun Jackson, he might straight out get released if they can't find a trade partner. Since we talked about it last week, they agreed to find a trade partner, and then it came out over the weekend that he'll get released if they can't find something. So I imagine someone will come through with like a seventh round pick. Um, Maybe
Mhm.
not. Maybe they'll just wait and sign him to the vet minimum, or let him pick which contender he wants to go to. But those are some guys that we'd like to see get moved. Hopefully, it benefits our fantasy season. We're through week 8, which typically is the halfway point, but we get an extra game, so we're not quite officially at the half. I don't know when the official halfway point is. Is that like after the 1 o'clock games on Sunday? Is that how we
Something
determine
like that.
at halftime of the 1 o'clock game in the first quarter? Like who knows? But we're just halfway through. The season's getting started. There's a long way to go, but we do got to start looking ahead to potential playoff matchups and for fantasy wise, because those will be coming up in just a few short weeks. But as always, thank you again to listening to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. We hope to have Tyler back soon. And as always, he wants to tell you this podcast is more fun for us and more fun for you when you get involved.
Definitely. And one more time, reminder to go to thecouchgms.com to check out even more content than this show will give you. And thank you one more time for listening to the Couch GMs. For Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kerth, and we'll see y'all later in the week to preview Week 9.